Well, hello everybody and welcome to CoMotion Labs Fundamentals for Startups. For those of you who are new to us, CoMotion Labs provides a multi-industry lab system hosting startups inside and outside of the UW community in life sciences, biotech, health tech, medical devices, robotics and hardware, software, IT, and fintech. There's probably some more too. Our startups range from pre-seed to Series A, employing 2 to 15 people each, and are variously headed by students, faculty, and community leaders with both new and seasoned entrepreneurs represented. While we wait for everyone to log in, I'll make a few quick announcements. Next week, Minda Bruce, co-founder and managing director at First Row Partners, will present Preparing for Due Diligence, What Comes After Yes and Before the Check. I love that topic. All of our Fundamentals for Startups presentations are archived on our CoMotion website under lab/startup training videos. I think they're also all on YouTube as well. We've covered a ton of topics over the last few years, so if you find yourself with some free time, check out our past talks. For our full schedule and to register for future fundamentals, visit comotion.uw.edu/events. Also subscribe on YouTube and click the little bell, and then you'll be notified of all of our future live streams. Finally, Fundamentals for Startups is funded in part by a grant from the Economic Development Agency. We will be dropping a link in the chat to a short survey. Please tell us who you are, where you're watching, and how you heard about this. This really helps our reporting. I had to write these reports for several years, and it's very difficult to do if we don't get data right away. So you'd be doing us a huge favor if you fill that out. Also this year, we're proud to partner with Bluetooth to support the Fundamentals for Startups program. See how Bluetooth audio sharing is poised to once again change the way you will experience audio and connect with the world around you. Quick video for you.
Bluetooth introduced the world to wireless audio. Calling, listening, watching, making us safer, more productive, more joyful. It's part of the fabric of our lives. Now, Bluetooth will bring us even closer to each other and our world with audio sharing. It will let us share with others our music, our experiences, listening and watching together. The places we go will share with us, enriching our experiences, helping us hear our world. Breaking down barriers between interests, cultures, generations. Introducing Bluetooth audio sharing. Closer together.
I muted myself. You'd think that after 6 months of living on Zoom, I would have figured that out by now. So today, Lisa Fernow is here to discuss startup marketing imperatives. Lisa brings over 30 years of experience as a strategist, global marketer, and consumer insights professional. After serving in senior marketing roles at PepsiCo and Time Warner, Lisa founded Fernow Consulting in 2000 to help entrepreneurs, enterprises, and visionary nonprofits innovate more successfully. She's blogged on innovation for the Marketing Executive Network Group and the American Marketing Association, and has served on the S.C. Johnson School Advisory Board since 1999. Lisa has served as a lecturer for CoMotion, Seattle University, WeWork Labs, Founder Institute, and AOA. Lisa will take all questions via chat. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. I might chime in and ask the questions in real time, or we might hold it till the end. And I will now turn the presentation over to Lisa.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for organizing, and for everyone who's taking time out of their day. I really appreciate your time. This presentation covers 13 strategic marketing imperatives that every startup must get right. And it's based on my work with startups, but also research I've conducted with other CEOs, CMOs, and investors who have been through the wars and kind of have lived and learned. And so these are their lessons as well as mine. We're going to make the presentation available to you after the session. And I'll also provide my email. So if we don't get to your questions, I hope you will feel free to reach out and ask that question or make a comment on the side. So as you listen to this, I hope you'll think about maybe one or two things that might cause you to focus more for your situation. And to that end, I wanted to just understand a little bit who you are. And I'm hoping you can say a little bit about what business you're in, whether you're B2C, B2B, and how far along you are. And hopefully Brady can feed me that information.
Yep, nothing yet. We've got somebody from OHSU's Technology Transfer Office.
Okay, all right, great. Well, what I did was try to take examples from as broad a range of industries and business situations as I can, so that you should see some B2B, you should see some B2C, and various stages of development. So hopefully you'll be able to relate to the examples that I've shown. We've already covered this, but I think the most important thing I can mention is that in addition to the kind of work that I've been doing with startups, I've been a strong UW supporter. I was an advisory board member at the Foster School, and I have been a guest lecturer and consultant to 2 UW spinoffs, a business plan judge and a CoMotion mentor. And I always love meeting the entrepreneurs. I learned something from everyone, and it's very exciting. It's a great community. So just to say, thank you and keep it up.
Lisa, a couple people chimed in. We've got some retail tech marketers. We've got somebody B2C, medical devices, early stage R&D, founder of B2B tech, retail tech, more B2B, B2C, B2C product development and sales, and senior care pre-seed. So we're all over the place.
A great variety. That's fabulous. Let's get going. I want to start with the definition of marketing, because one of the things that I learned working with startups is that sometimes people think marketing is just PR and promotion, when in fact, if you've taken a lot of marketing courses or you've had a marketing career, it's a broader idea. And marketing in its broadest sense will involve 4 stages. And those are identifying the need, developing a solution for it, going to market, and accelerating performance. And if you feel like those are not marketing's job, don't worry about it. You know, if the CEO is doing it, or the head of sales is doing it, or head of product development is doing it, that's fine, as long as you're looking at this and considering these initiatives. So if you were to give it a little bit of thought, what do you think the most frequently given reasons for marketing or for failure of a startups would be? CEOs were surveyed, and they gave us a whole host of answers. If you want to chime in with Brady, or I'll just keep going depending on how fast we can do this.
Nothing yet.
Okay. I'm just going to go straight into it. This is one industry observer's take on what the top reasons CEOs gave for startup failure, and they could give more than one. But the bars in green are marketing or marketing related, and the very worst problem was they discovered there was no market need. 42% said they built it and nobody came. So that is pretty profound. And if you weren't sure that marketing was valuable to your startup, this should give you pause, I'll just say. So I want to start with the first strategic imperative, which is validating the market need, which was that first green bar. And you want to not only discover that there is a market need, but understand the opportunity as much as you can. And so some of the questions you want to be asking yourself is, what exactly is the problem you're solving, and who are you solving it for? Is it a substantial problem? Is it a large and definable market? How large is it? What solution might you be replacing, and where will all your volume come from? Because even if there's no direct competitor, there's something else they're doing to try to solve their problem. You want to be thinking about what are your strengths and weaknesses relative to the existing competitors you might be up against, and also emerging competitors and substitutes. And you want to have a very clear idea of why are you doing this? Why do you think you're going to do this better than anybody else? And how do you know you're entering at the right time? Those are just examples of the kinds of questions that I hope you'll be thinking about. And your investors are certainly going to be asking you. So validating the market need is really critical to help you focus your efforts as a company. And that can mean shorter time to market and greater market success. So for my next imperative is to understand the ecosystem that you're working in. And this is an example from a UW spinoff called Medify. And what they were doing was the founder of this company had a daughter who had a specific medical condition, and he was trying very hard to understand it. And he was going through every search engine he could find and every medical database he could find to get research about her condition, and it was all in different places. And so he founded Medify to kind of pull all that information together in an easily searchable database so that people could get to the information they need that was relevant for their situation. So in their case, their ecosystem included the patients, the caregivers. On one hand, those are the people who are using this product probably. Physicians and hospitals who might be experts required to help use this information once you know it's there. Drug companies and CROs, which are groups that help do clinical trials, but also insurance companies and advocacy groups. You know, those are all people who might be able to either build awareness for this product or use it or buy it or pay for it or get in the way of it if they're afraid of it. So it was very interesting to work with Medify because they initially thought they were dealing with a consumer product. And so their focus originally was understanding what kinds of conditions might be most important to build around. Like it could be breast cancer, it could be autism, it could be leukemia. And as they broadened their understanding of the ecosystem, what they discovered was that physicians were actually the power users of their beta. And that's because physicians already knew about the databases, but it was saving them a terrific amount of time to use it. And so that meant they could spend more time with patients. So having that lens and understanding who all the constituencies are is really helpful to understand the system support for your idea. And as you can probably tell, it also informs your decision. Are you going to market as a B2B, as a B2C, or a combination? And that answer can be surprising. So once you've got a flavor of your ecosystem, you're going to want to be able to look at segments within it and understand how to prioritize those. And you want to get traction with one of those before you take on the world. So the third imperative is to develop your value proposition. And if you're already a marketer, you might hear this framed as a positioning statement, and they're overlapping ideas. But since most of you guys are maybe B2B, I'll take it from the perspective of the value prop. Really all it is what does your target customer get versus what they pay? And then from a positioning point of view, it's how do you want them to think and feel about your brand? This is critical, and a lot of people skip over it. And you really want to understand who the target is in a lot of detail. What is their unmet need? What are they comparing you to? What benefits they're hoping to get from your product? Why should they believe that you're going to deliver those benefits? And what is the end result if they solve their problem? You know, and so it's really getting deep to understand all of those aspects. And you also want to be able to understand what it is they're risking in order to work with you. You know, they might be afraid of working with a startup because you're unproven. They might be giving up something they're already using. They might have to pay money. They might have to invest time. So they're also doing kind of a calculation saying, is this worthwhile for me to, you know, to take your product? So this will eventually inform what is called a messaging framework. So once you understand what the targets need from you, then you can figure out how to talk to them and how to handle their objections. So this is really foundational. So just to summarize the first three marketing imperatives, which is all about identifying the need. You want to validate the need, you want to understand your ecosystem, and you want to develop your value proposition and your positioning. Because if you can't find product and market fit with a attractive market that wants to buy your product right now, it's time to go back to the drawing board, and you should not waste all your money on anything else. So once you've got a sense of the need, then your next bucket of imperatives is to start to understand your solution. I'm trying to get my computer to, there it is, okay. So one of the first things you're going to want to do is develop your name and brand identity. And I wanted to share an example from Barn to Door, which I think does a really good job, and you know, you can check it out. They provide tools and resources to help sustainable practice farmers manage their marketing and sales functions, because they're farmers, they're not marketers. So they find a way to kind of serve that community. The Barn to Door has a really excellent company name. It's memorable. It is, you know, it's trademarkable, and they've done a really outstanding job with their visual identity. It's all sort of farmer related, and it all has integrity. And their logo, if you look at the red barn door, it works both functionally and emotionally, because it does have a flavor of the barn door. And every aspect of their visuals is farmer friendly. Now, this is not something that I would expect you to get perfectly out of the blocks, especially on the visual identity. You know, you can work it in stages. And as you get experience with your customers, you'll be able to sharpen your brand identity. So the next big imperative is to define the end-to-end customer experience. And Steve Jobs is sort of the person I hold as the best in class at this. And he would say, you got to start with the customer experience and work back towards the technology, and not the other way around. And he was a big believer in observing people struggling. And that was the kind of thing he would do to figure out what was going on. So when you're thinking about your end-to-end customer experience, you want to think about all of the touch points that they might have. So it's not just using the products, it's how they discover it, it's how they try it, it's how they buy it, it's how they use it, how they fix it, how they return it, how they cancel it, how they renew it, how they upgrade, how they buy more of it, and how they get rid of it in the end of life. You know, so there's, you know, whatever touch points are relevant for your situation, think about the entire spectrum and figure out what is that customer experience need to be like from their point of view. If you design your product in a vacuum without understanding it from the point of view of the customer, you're going to fail. The other thing you want to do when you're defining the experience is to think about what will make it memorable, complete, and disruptive of your competition. Those are three important dimensions. So what aspects of the experience can you leverage to really drive your growth and profitability? What do you need to do superbly well to create incredible brand loyalty and willingness to refer? That's what you want to be thinking about. So for number 6, and related to the experience, is then helping to inform the minimum viable product. Now, this is going to be founder driven, it's going to be engineering and developer driven for sure, but marketing plays an important role in representing the voice of the consumer in all of this. You know, and I show the example of the remote control because that was one where everyone who loves gadgets got in a room and built something that I only use 4 buttons on this thing. You know, I don't know about the rest of you. It was way over engineered, and it made it confusing and annoying. So minimum viable product just means what's the basic version that you're going to use to learn and develop a stronger product over time as you search for the product and the market fit. And I'm also including website in this because I think, you know, back to the earlier slide about the consumer experience, if you're building a B2B product, the website is itself part of your product. And so you want to think about every single piece of that customer experience as being part of that minimum viable product. And it's a critical decision because this is a lot of where a lot of your money goes. And this is where your consumers are first going to encounter and vote yes or no on your offer. So I said marketing's role here is to represent the voice of the consumer so that you are really investing in the right parts. So I want to show you an example of this, and this is from Tonal, which is a stock photography company for people who want to use diverse images. And there was a big gap in the market. And on the left is when they launched it, and on the right is what they've got now. So in the original product, they were launched on Shopify, and they had a manual subscription process, and they only had 6 photo categories. So it wasn't the full thing they were envisioning. But as they got experience with it and they grew, they got to the point where they could own their site and create a complete experience the way they wanted to do it. And it allows for automated subscriptions, and they have an expanded list of photo categories. So, they took more control over it as they got an understanding of what needed to be built. And so you should expect that, you'll continue to return to this subject and say, what are people ready for now? What can you do now? I love this example. I think they've done a fabulous job on it. So next up, I want to talk about a really key aspect of developing your solution, which is to secure your intellectual property. And that obviously will include product patents, trademarks, but also includes things like your URLs and your social media handles. And nowadays, those can be harder to get than the trademarks themselves. Now, the CEO and the head of engineering and the CFO are probably driving the overall intellectual property strategy, but marketing can play a role here in helping to identify potential applications for the technology. You'll want to talk to a good intellectual property lawyer sooner rather than later to make sure that you don't end up with something that you can't protect well. And investors are not going to want to buy a portfolio that has a lot of holes in it. So that's really important. I thought InSpa did a really good job, because if you look at their URL, it's inspa.com. All of their social handles are related to InSpa. They haven't had to make too many compromises, and they have been able to trademark this well. So that's just one example. So when you think about the times where you need to develop your solution, you want to be able to create a name and a brand identity that's going to work. You want to prototype your minimum viable product, and you want to secure your IP. And all of this is about developing a solution that delivers on the promise and solves the problem that people have told you they have. So next up is going to market. One of the first things that CEOs need to be thinking about is what high performance team do you need to build? And there's 2 kind of questions that help think through this. One is, what kind of marketing tasks are you going to want to be able to do, and what talent is needed to deliver it? So you don't have to hire everything into the company. Obviously, you could be working with outside suppliers. You can be working with contract workers. You can work with specialists. You don't have to bring everyone in-house, but you're going to need a couple of key hires that can do the most important marketing tasks that you really need domain knowledge to be able to do. So some tips that CEOs have shared with me is that you want to hire what you need when you need it, but you also want an idea of what you're building out. You want to have some idea of what your marketing plan might involve. So if you are knowingly going, if you're going after B2B and you are mainly doing enterprise sales, then the marketing department had better be able to support that effort. Whereas if it's a consumer product, you might need a whole different set of skills. So, you want to think about what you're going to need. And what knowledge do they need to already have to bring to you versus what they can learn on the job? So that's another consideration. And then last, I think it's about thinking through the culture you want to build, and that's bigger than just the marketing team, clearly, but having that in mind, where you're trying to build and slotting things in as you're ready is very important to think through. So connected to that is to bring on the right first customers. A lot of the important groundwork you will have done up front when you're identifying your target customers and the buyers, and define your positioning or value proposition and define your minimum viable product. But marketing can support the sales effort by providing background research to help qualify and prioritize potential customers, by creating selling materials, and providing ongoing customer tracking and support to feed back to the sales team. And you probably know this, but I think the goal of a startup is to find that sustainable, repeatable, and scalable business model. And so this beta period where you're finding the right customers and getting rid of the wrong customers is really sensitive. You want them to be representative of your target market and your minimum viable product use case, but also willing to work with you to iterate on the offering. So those are the early adopters who are friendly, that will give you the feedback you're looking for. You need to get early traction with them, and you need to learn from them and value them. But at some point, you're also thinking about who are your most valuable customers going to be that might not sign up with you right away, but you really want them as a marquee customer, or they're super strategic for you. So you want to also have those in your sights, and marketing can help do some of that research to get you there. So this next one is huge. You want to develop your marketing strategy and your go-to-market plan. And marketing strategy covers what we call the 4 Ps of marketing in the context of the overall business strategy. So that means what product you're doing, what price you're charging, what place or channels of distribution you're selling through, and how are you promoting it. And those are sort of high-level understanding of how you're going to market. And then the go-to-market plan goes into detail into all of the activities needed to launch and sustain the business. So that means, what are you doing? What activities are you doing? Who's doing them? When are you doing them? And what are you paying for? And you're also going to want to be measuring this. And so you want to establish what your key performance indicators are so that your metrics are clear and you're measuring them. You also want to include contingency plans. What happens if you are wildly successful? What are you gonna put in? How are you gonna support that? Or what if things go wrong? How are you gonna pivot? So think about your contingencies, and this is a lot of work. And you'll want to do this in concert with your functional counterparts, obviously. So this is a big bucket here. And I mentioned earlier, the last part of go-to-market is execution. And that's all about delivering those marketing activities in the plan. And the best strategy will fail if you don't execute well. And sometimes a kind of so-so strategy can be executed well and work, but it's only once you've gotten into market and you see what's actually working and tinkering with it, that's real, the rubber will meet the road. So marketing ought to be tracking the key performance indicators, diagnosing performance gaps versus your objectives, whether you're outperforming or underperforming, and recommending how to adjust. And this is where you have to be really responsive to what you're hearing from the market and working tightly with members of the team. So you should be hearing from the sales force what's going on. You should be hearing from customer success what's going on. And you're the ear listening for all of these signals. So the whole idea behind the go-to-market imperatives: you're developing a high-performance team, you're bringing on the right customers, you're developing your marketing strategy and go-to-market plan, but it's all about alignment of resources. A great idea is going to go nowhere if you don't have the people to deliver it, the customers to adopt it, alignment of your marketing strategy and tactics within your business strategy, and the ability to execute. It's about focus. So for this last bucket, we're talking about how do you accelerate performance. And one of the more important ways to do this is to continue to conduct what I call lean research along the way, really. And that's just enough depth and quality of research to get answers to the questions that are important for your decision making. Researchers will say research is an aid to judgment, not a substitute for judgment, but you need to be feeding your judgment. So you need to understand your consumers, what's driving them, how they're responding to your product or service. You need to know what's working, what's not, and why. And marketing takes point on listening for all of this and translating it into insights that the rest of the organization can act on. Here, it's really important to revisit your assumptions repeatedly. Like, is my target correct? Why might I think it isn't? Do I have the right business model? I thought I might be B2B, but am I really B2C and B2B? And so it's just continuing to revisit your assumptions. Is your go-to-market strategy working as you expect? So there's a lot of ways to do this without spending a fortune. There's secondary research you can tap into, or you can do primary research on a shoestring. And you'll want to also install, the right tracking measures, like Google Analytics and HubSpot and Salesforce, whatever you need to track things that way. So there's a lot of different ways you can skin that cat, but you want to be asking those questions all the time. And so the last one, if you've done everything right, you get to plan for expansion. And you want to think through where and how you might expand and consider which investments are going to yield the greatest returns. And that's also an overall business decision, but marketing can help inform that. So you might be expanding geographically. You might be adding products or improvements to products. You might have new customer segments you want to go after. You might want to build infrastructure. You might want to have strategic partnerships, more marketing, just more. Bigger loyalty programs and expanded teams. So there's a lot of dimensions to what expansion might mean, but you want to be thinking ahead to what you'd add if you saw something working well. So when you think about accelerating performance, we're really talking about ready to ramp and get that hockey stick that your investors are really hoping you're going to deliver. So conducting lean research and preparing for expansion will keep you ahead of that question. And you can evaluate where to make your next investments. So to pull all this together, if you think about the marketing falling into 4 buckets, there's identifying the need, there's developing the solution, there's going to market, and then there's accelerating performance. You can see how each of these imperatives, I think I'm missing a number here. I'm looking at them. Each of these imperatives are, they have their place, but what I want to leave you with is that wherever you are, just think about which one of these is really most important for you right now, and ask yourself the question, are you paying enough attention to it? And which is most important to your situation? So we may or may not have enough time to answer all the questions, and you may want to digest this later and then think, you can feel free to reach out to me if you want to talk. I'm really open to having these conversations because I find them fascinating and I want to help entrepreneurs. So I want to thank you for your time, and Brady will funnel in the questions.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, everybody, if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. I just have a couple from listening to the presentation. I liked the lean research concept that you were kind of talking about. Can you dive a bit deeper into that? I don't know if there are any case studies or really good failure case studies, or just anything to help us kind of engage with that concept a little bit better.
Sure. Well, for example, if you know that you've got a particular target audience, let's say they are medical professionals, if you can find research that's already been done with them to understand what their challenges are, that's the price of the report. You don't have to actually do that research. But you can also go to friends and family, people who you can reach through your connections and ask to follow them around virtually or in real life and get observations about what kind of problems they have and how they're solving them. And you can also do the same thing when it's time to use your product. And UW has the Lean Canvas, which I like, that talks about the jobs, pains, and gains. And there are other great presentations on how to do that kind of work. So I would refer you to some of those videos. But did you have a particular situation you wanted to bring up?
Well, I mean, I think lean research, I guess I was thinking about like the secondary and primary sources, and this is somebody actually just asked about primary research. But on the second, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think primary research is I go out and talk to you and that person and that person and that person and that person.
Yep.
I do the work of understanding it, and secondary is somebody else does the work and then I read what they came up with. On the secondary,
I was going to just say secondary research was done by a third party not knowing about what you're actually launching. So primary could be done by a third party, like you can hire a survey house to do things, or you can do it yourself. And there are times when you're going to want to, have a third party do it because you want them to give frank feedback and they're not going to tell you that your baby's ugly, but So it's not about who does it so much as whether it's about what your company's doing versus it already exists and someone else has already studied it.
Okay, that's an important distinction.
Yep.
On that secondary research, do you have any trustworthy groups, any places to point folks? Are there these market research groups that you like better than others? I've never pointed anybody in those directions. This is something I don't know about.
Well, the most practical answer I can give you is to Google your question and see if any third-party research comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So if there are associations that are important to your business, they may be doing those kinds of pieces of research. I have a client right now called Cyndia, which does pay equity. And I discovered that there is an association that focuses on that question, and they have already paid to do the research, and they've, for however much money you can get access to their findings. So start there.
Sure. Yeah. Derek Harn asked, how do you know when you have product market fit?
That's a great question. When they start saying, I want to bring all of my colleagues in and have them do this, when they start recommending you, I think, and also when they start buying more from you, like if it's a subscription service and, you've given them a 3-month trial and then they have to start paying for it and they do, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Those are 2 signs.
Got another one. Can you expand a little bit on the interplay between marketing and sales in the early stages, and where should those resources be concentrated?
In general, if you're doing a B2B company, it's usual that you have a really strong salesperson who speaks marketing, and I think they're laying out an overarching sales approach that marketing supports. But if it's a consumer product, marketing generally will take the lead on it because you're talking to groups of consumers out in mass. Does that answer the question? But either way, I think it's really important that marketing and sales be very joined at the hip. And sometimes that's not the case, but I think the best run companies have a really good, respectful, reciprocal relationship between the two.
Yeah. Beyond Apple, are there, and I know you put up Steve Jobs as kind of a marketing guru, but are there any businesses that you look at as having really nailed that interplay between maybe sales and marketing, or marketing and production, or whoever it is? Anybody that you look to as a case study?
My very first company was Frito-Lay, and I've got to say, they sent marketing people to drive the sales trucks and stock the shelves so that marketers understood what salespeople went through. And you went on the call and you saw the grocery buyer laugh at your marketing materials. There's no better education.
Yeah.
And they are just a very well organized company and tremendous executors, and they've been doing it for a long time. So I would use that as a great example.
Sure. Eric Bell asked, hey Eric, have you ever seen a minimum viable product that didn't have enough features rather than too many features? Or would that make it not minimally viable?
I'd say it isn't minimum yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think you got to figure out what are the jobs, pains, and gains, and figuring out what's the most important job, and if you're not doing that, you have to keep going. That's a great question. I'd have to think more about, have I actually seen someone launch with not enough?
Sure. Brandon Doyle asks, how important is the right domain name versus focusing more on CEO? And that actually goes along with another question that he had asked earlier, which is how important is buying the right domain name really early on, which can be expensive?
If you require people to Google search to find you, or you require them to remember the name of your company to find you, it pays to have a really great URL. If you have an outgoing sales force that can go and address every single prospective customer, maybe you can live with one that isn't so hot. But I haven't found a scenario where someone had a terrible URL and it was helpful to them.
Yeah, okay, except those guys that buy the misspellings, it works out okay for them. Michaela Yang asked, in a small and niche market, what are the most important marketing strategies for customer acquisition? So yeah, small and niche. So I don't know, maybe 3D printers that print in scented plastics. I'm in a hardware incubator, so I'm thinking about 3D printers all the time.
It all comes down to who you're targeting and how they normally want to buy. You know, so if it's a niche market and, you know, you're targeting, let's say it's printers, and you know that you can address those printers, you know who those people are, and you have their email addresses and you have permission to email them, that would be an efficient way to get to them. But if they need to have a presentation and a relationship because it's a big complicated sell, then email's a terrible idea, and what you really want is to get the sales call.
Sure.
So everything you do would be about developing leads and feeding marketing qualified leads into the sales team.
Mm-hmm.
So it will really depend on who they are and how they want to buy and what kind of a sell they are looking for.
Okay, great. Well, I'm not seeing many more questions. I'll ask that everybody does take a minute to fill out that survey so that we can not go crazy when it's time to report to our grantors. Other than that, you know, that's all we have time for. We really appreciate you, Lisa, taking the time to talk to everybody. This was a great topic. I think a lot of early stage companies have questions about marketing, and we really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us today.
It's a pleasure. I hope to hear from you.
I'm sure you will. I know that you made your contact information available to folks, and you've told me before the call that you're happy to talk to folks after the fact. So if anybody did not get your questions answered, please do reach out. You can reach out to me. I think folks generally know how to get a hold of me, or you've seen Lisa's contact information. 100 ways to reach out to us, so we'll be happy to make that connection. And as a reminder, next Friday at noon, we will be hearing from Minda Bruce, co-founder and managing director at First Row Partners, and she'll present Preparing for Due Diligence, what comes after yes, but before the check. Sign up for that. We'll see you next week. That's an important topic. I know I think a lot of folks get to due diligence and they don't have kind of a deal room put together, and then it stalls and then it doesn't go well. So Minda is an investor who does this all the time, and that'll be awesome content. So look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you, Lisa, for your time, and everybody have a good weekend.
Thanks, Brady. Thank you, everyone.